Welcome back to We Know Scripted TV, where today we know Cobra Kai Season 6, Part 3. It's over. Cobra Kai is done, but we've watched it all. My name is Grace Leeder, but of course, I'm not alone. First, I'm here with Sensei Jason. Jason, how you doing?
Grace, I'm great. Much like the biggest guest star of the series finale drop once bellowed and said, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm so scared.
It's a great pull. I really love that. Of course, it wouldn't be a Cobra Kai reunion without Sensei Marissa. Marissa, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Grace. Good to see you. Good to see Jason, as always. Excited to be back in the dojo, but maybe not as quite as excited as Jason.
He's scared, actually.
Scared.
He's just feigning excitement.
Yeah.
I took a lot of caffeine pills before this. I got to tell you.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I love it. All right, I'm very excited. We're back. We're talking about Cobra Kai because Season 6, Part 3, because it really stretched it out. Despite being a Netflix show, they really took their time giving us all of the content of Cobra Kai, and it's over. And I'm very excited to talk about because, like, you two talked about Cobra Kai. I just talked about a lot. I've talked about almost all of Cobra Kai. I've never talked on the podcast really about Cobra Kai. I messaged Jason briefly to be like, hey, I watched all of Cobra Kai and I have thoughts. And now we'll put them on a podcast.
That's usually the take. Hey, I've watched Cobra Kai. I have thoughts.
And that was just the opening I needed to come in for a strike. Like, hey, Grace, how about a Cobra Kai podcast?
That's right. I'm excited to chat about it because it is sort of like, it's just started in 2018. Is that right? It was a YouTube show that made it its way over to Netflix. Has become like a extremely popular Netflix show. Has sort of like revived. This is the era of like franchise IP, and this fits sort of perfectly in that, I think. And of course, like, it's funny to say like, oh, it's over. Also, they're doing a movie later this year, so it's like there's more Karate Kai. There's just no more Cobra Kai, Jason. So I guess I'll start with like, how are you feeling with the fact that Cobra Kai is over? We have the last batch of episodes.
I mean, I'm very conflicted, right? Because when Cobra Kai first came out, as you mentioned, it was YouTube. I think at the time, YouTube was trying to get a different streaming platform lifted off the ground called YouTube Red, and this was one of the first things that came out on that platform, and it was just like, Cobra Kai, like, from Johnny Lawrence's perspective, like, who cares? Whatever, cash grab, whatever you want to call it. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, this thing's actually pretty good. It's actually got some heart. It's got, it's about the underdog. It's about, maybe Daniel wasn't the good guy. And it's like, oh, interesting. I came pretty late to Cobra Kai, actually. So I came probably in like season 2 or 3 after hearing everybody talk about how great it was. And of course, when it, launched on Netflix is when I started my watching of it. It was like, and then I just like digested. I wolfed the whole thing down. Oh my God, this is so fantastic. It's corny in the right ways. It's heartful in the right ways. It's actually got some interesting, great fighting in some amateurish but interesting ways. So I just kind of digested it. And honestly, like, I wasn't even, as a kid, the biggest Karate Kid fan. I came pretty late to that as well. I think Karate Kid 1 came out when I was -1. So, it's like, and I never thought I would connect to something like I connected to Cobra Kai with the slight connection I had to the IP. So, and I'm happy that we got it. I'm glad that they're ending it because it was getting old. It was getting a little long in the tooth. So it's like, okay, let's land this bird the right way. And I think they really, really did that.
Marissa, what about you? How are you feeling?
Well, as the eldest member of our podcast team, I was around for the launch of the entire franchise, and it was a big deal. Like, it was a big deal when I was a kid. Cobra Kai, like, all the boys were really into Cobra Kai, and so I lived on a block with a bunch of boys, so I ended up like going into the Karate Kid world. But I thought that was like the end of it. I was really into also the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank as well. That was a big thing. My biggest thing was like, I just wanted a Mr. Miyagi in my life. Like, I wanted someone to find me and say, Marissa, you can be good at this, and then teach me how to do things. And that sort of happened because when I was also late to the game on the Cobra Kai side, I, much like Jason, was like, what is this show? No, I'm not going to be watching Cobra Kai, the story of Johnny Lawrence. No, thank you. But then I was in my apartment building and I saw a car that said Cobra Kai, it had its license plate, it was Cobra Kai. And I was like, what is this? what is going on? And then the guy,
was it Stingray?
no,
Yeah.
almost, it was a Dodge Charger, and it said Cobra Kai on it. And then the guy who lived below diagonal from me was like, had Cobra Kai everywhere on his balcony. It was like Cobra Kai everywhere. So Cobra Kai was in the air. And then on post recaps, Josh was like, hey, if you watch all of Cobra Kai, maybe you could come on a podcast. So I watched all of Cobra Kai in the span of 2 weeks, and I was hooked. I couldn't stop watching. I loved the characters. They did such a great job with character development. Towards the end, yeah, I mean, some of these people are, in graduate school now, or like it's not necessarily high school.
When Miguel's got like a 5 o'clock shadow in a lot of the episodes, and he's like supposed to be under 18. I'm like, okay, maybe we've done this a long time.
Well, yeah. That's classic Hollywood, though. Just have to be like, you're 32. We got to play. You're gonna be a high schooler. Yeah.
Well, as long as they could still fight, I mean, I guess that's all you have to do, because it didn't matter how old you were in the series, which is another thing that I loved too, is that like the old people got some action in more ways than one.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I actually I didn't catch Cobra Kai right at the beginning when it came out. I actually was like, when it got covered on Pusher Recaps, and you two and Josh were sort of talking about it, and I apologize if there are other people who are chatting about it, but it was like when you see something that other people you respect their television opinions of are watching a thing and liking it, and you're like, oh, I should probably check that out. I mean, yeah. So then I watched it. I just never felt like I ever had time that was I was catching up to it. And so then for me, it got presented as oh, Cobra Kai, the show is coming back. I've been writing for Parade and got the opportunity to write about it and interview some people from it. And so I did a massive catch up to the point where because I had sort of left it on the shelf for long enough, I was like, I think I'm just gonna watch from the beginning. And so I watched in the span of a couple weeks, literally 65 episodes of Cobra Kai. So I feel like I've done the Cobra Kai I feel a little embarrassed to be oh, I wish I kept up with it so I didn't have to do that, but I have watched a lot of Cobra Kai over the last little while, and I feel like I really love the Karate Kid movies. I kind of love all of them. Think there's varying degrees of whether or not each of them are as good as the other ones.
Yeah.
I like them all. I was a big pro wrestling fan growing up, which people probably, if you've heard me talk, I've probably weaseled a wrestling reference into a podcast somewhere. And for me, Cobra Kai and Karate Kid and this other stuff that was fighting to me, wrestling adjacent stuff was stuff I really tried to seek out and watch, because it was almost I just couldn't get enough wrestling, and I would look for anything else that was adjacent. I'm even for me, I loved American Gladiators, stuff that was just combat fighting stuff. I was saying to someone the other day that basically all of my interests in some form have to do with being competitive, and so I really liked Karate Kid. And then I have to say I just really enjoyed watching Cobra Kai through. I do think that this show is really good at times and is worth the moments that are you're that's fine. This is a storyline we're following.
Called it a karate telenovela. It is a soap opera, but also karate.
That's what for me, that's what everyone would joke about. It was kind of the defense of wrestling. It was it's an action soap opera. So it doesn't surprise me that Cobra Kai, I mean, Karate Kid and all this predates actually basically the rise of pro wrestling. So not to sound like Cobra Kai is taking from wrestling. It's actually kind of potentially the opposite. But I do think there's a very simple structure to the show a lot of the times that's really satisfying to watch. That there's a bad guy, they have to beat the bad guy. Do we have to work together? Then by the next season, the bad guy's actually going to maybe work with them, and then there's betrayals and people are on different teams, and I don't know, it's just a very fun ecosystem to live in. I think generally the story is of good and working together, and that sort of stuff prevailing over people who are power hungry and evil, and that's pretty satisfying to watch in television, I think,
especially in 2025.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, by the end of this series, by the end of this drop, listen, we all knew what the outcome was going to be, right? But it was so fun to get there. And I mean, in the final twist of Johnny having to fight is whoa, first of all, but it made so much sense. Did we all know Johnny was going to win at the end? I'm sure we did. But getting there was a whole lot of fun.
The way they just like hit every note with this ending, I think they closed every character out, and they did so in like a very systematic way, like the way that Robbie was done early so that other characters could come in and shine and have their moments. The final fight choreography with Miguel was just like a love letter to this character and all of the other fights that he has been in, and with the little flashbacks back and forth, and also to Johnny, because Johnny is part of his story. But when Johnny took the mat, the last thing, I was up out of my seat. I was just like cheering every single moment, like it was a live like thing that I was attending, and then I was also yelling, "Sweep the leg, sweep the leg!" I was like, "Who am I? What is happening?" But I was so caught up into it, and I think again that just shows how much love that the creators and the writers and the actors put into these characters that like made me want to cheer for them.
Yeah, I think what's really good about the last season and the last batch is that there obviously is this like there is a love and attention paid to this really big cast. Like it's really big. When you start like expanding out with everybody that's in it, to the point where like the first episode in the part 3, we like literally are in a totally different location for the most part. It's really big. I do think that they do a really good job of wrapping individual stories up and then really finishing strong, Jason, with like this is Johnny's show. This is the Johnny Lawrence show, and like Danny's going to be his mentor as he has to fight one more time, basically.
Yeah, you mentioned how much the cast has ballooned, and it really, really has. But the beautiful thing about this final season is that by the time we get to this last batch, a lot of the secondary characters' stories have been wrapped up in the second batch. So we can really focus on the origin characters who we started the whole show with, specifically Johnny and Miguel at the very end of like, these are the people that got you to love this show, that got you to love what was going on here. And we're going to focus on them, and they're going to get their wins, including Tori, who became like such the ultimate underdog in this show, and how they really, really focused on those characters and just kind of left everyone else. Like, I don't think Kenny, Devin, and Anthony LaRusso, thankfully, don't get more than 3 words in this whole drop of episodes. And I'm thankful for it because they really remembered who brought them here, and they really celebrated them in this last batch of episodes.
Yeah, I think Devin said, "You did it, coach." And that was it. Anthony didn't say anything
until he talked to Sam at the very end.
Yeah,
that was all he got. Thankfully, listen, for those that have listened to me and Marissa's Cobra Kai coverage, you know how much I hate most of the LaRussos, except for the one brought by marriage, Amanda.
This is very funny because I really don't know. I'm really like not super tuned into like the convos about Cobra Kai in terms of like who people like and who people don't like. So this will be kind of fun as I'm like, what if I came in and I'm secretly an Anthony LaRusso?
Are you?
I'm not.
Okay.
I would have to stop this podcast.
I often find myself a little more defensive of like child actors in a way that I like don't want to just critique them at all. Like that's what I feel very strongly about, is like someone who worked with children to be like, no, we should just like, it's fine. Don't even worry if it's bad. Just never mention that he's on the show. But I feel you, Jason. I don't think you're wrong. The LaRusso family dynamic is probably like the weakest of the show. But actually, when I was talking with Ralph Macchio about this, that's cool.
Whoa.
I dropped that.
Yeah,
whoa, hey.
Drop that.
Yeah, are you dropped?
Yeah.
Sorry, name drop. Yeah,
me and Ralph were chopping it up.
Just one sec. I just gotta pick the name I dropped off of the floor. He felt like he had a very hard time. It talks about with the show and like not butting head with the creators, but feeling like there's been so much ground that's been covered with Danny LaRusso, specifically like 3 movies, and then we're coming back for the 6th season of a show, that he felt like oftentimes there was like moments that would happen that he felt like were trying to be written to like, you have to create conflict in the show, but he's like, but like we've seen so much of Danny, like Danny wouldn't act like this, or like even Johnny wouldn't act like this, and that's not how Danny would respond to it. I say that to be like mostly that it's a little I guess I get the appeal of like, if you don't feel like there's much interesting stuff like in terms of the LaRusso family, just like not really going there as often, because it's like, what else can you really do? Like Danny is a really like well-trodden character in terms of like the course of the show,
Yes, but he whined. We did not like you can totally see where he came up across, like that conversation makes sense in what we saw in the show.
And I think the show in the very first season did a good job of kind of lightly painting Daniel as the villain, right? Because the story has been so long. Daniel's is the underdog, Johnny's a jerk, and then we get this first season where we see it from Johnny's perspective, and it's like Johnny's just trying to change himself, trying to be a good guy, and Daniel's like, from their past history, Daniel's coming in like, no, you can't do this, blah 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 blah. But like we're on Johnny's side. We're like, no, like leave Johnny alone, Daniel. He's just trying to be a good man. Leave him be. So I think the show did a good job at the beginning of Cobra Kai, showing a different side of Daniel, and not villainizing him totally, but making him kind of the antagonist while not making him a villain.
But and I also like Daniel's character development here in these last couple of episodes, because he said a bad word.
Mm-hmm.
He put on a Cobra Kai gi.
I didn't know how much I needed. I didn't know how much I needed to see Daniel LaRusso in a Cobra Kai gi until it freaking happened.
He said no to that initially. He was like, I was not going to do it, but he's like, everybody wants it, so I'll do it. So.
Yeah.
He came out and I was like, oh my, I freaked out. I was like, wow, that is badass. Especially how they shot it. I was like, my goodness.
Grace, wait, who said that?
Ralph Macchio.
Oh, okay.
He didn't say it to me. He didn't say it to me. I read it in another interview that I was doing for research because I was going to be interviewing Ralph Macchio.
Okay, just checking.
I interviewed, just to clarify, I've interviewed so if you have questions, I interviewed Ralph Macchio, interviewed Martin Kove, I interviewed Alicia Hannikim, and I interviewed Jacob Bertrand. So a bit of an eclectic swath of people that I interviewed for the final drop. Do you want to? I mean, I feel like we jumped into Daniel, but really, I feel like we should talk about Johnny's storyline, which is like, I think, like, obviously it's his. I feel like it is his show for so much of it, and sort of the culmination of this. Obviously, the second episode in the last batch is the his girlfriend's in labor, so he's got to get back, and then the marriage. This is very, very sweet. I thought this episode of him, like, I love that they're like, he's like, I gotta fly back, I gotta go back and then come back. Oh no, that's the last. The
Barcelona is just like around the corner situation. Yeah, but like this whole point where he's like looking up stuff on the computer and finding things to do and then like combining them all is a very like first season Johnny move. Like he is very, anytime we see Johnny on a computer, it's going to be a good time in terms of like comedy or whatever we find. And I really loved how he still did this, but it wasn't as like Johnny-y as usual. Like it was really, really well done. And I will say, I love a montage. A Johnny montage, to be specific, but I really think that the creators of Cobra Kai should get like an Emmy for the art of the montage. But this one in particular was just really heartwarming, and I loved how it all came together in the end.
That'd be good. They could do best montage, and then as they're introducing them, they play the montage. The best montages. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Johnny is adulting montage is always so fun as Johnny learns new social skills and how to dress and how to cook and all that. And I thought it was just so unbelievably sweet that he did this all for Carmen, because he's doing his bro stuff at first. He's putting roses in soda bottles. He's wearing his tux shirt, and he's like, no, let me take it up a notch. He's learning to cook. He's making it romantic, hiring a string quartet to play. Mm-hmm. It's great to see, like, to get reminded of the growth that Johnny has found in this series.
Do you know what is a moment that I really, so we go into episode 13, where this is where Johnny and Kreese are going to have this moment. Ooh. And what I really appreciate, again, for a show that I think does sort of, it knows that it's like, it was born out of like an 80s, movie. It has like these like 80s aesthetic. There is something I think really, great, and I think actually the writing over the course of the show has been really good in the ways in which they do acknowledge that, like, it's from the 80s and there are these like old school mentalities, and also like we have to be modern, like it's a new generation, we're in a different time. And for me, the thing that I think they do the best without being really heavy-handed with this is when like Kreese apologizes and Johnny doesn't accept the apology. Yeah, I actually think that is a super well done sort of modern thing, Marissa, where like there is such a TV tropeness of like the person apologizes and the person accepts them and forgets everything. And the fact that Johnny like couldn't accept Kreese's apology. I thought was like a really powerful thing. Just from I think about like a lot of people who will be watching this, I'm like, to know like you don't actually have to accept an apology. That's just because an apology is given doesn't mean you have to accept it. I think it's really powerful from Johnny, who's like basically always wanted like acceptance, right? And like and wanted to like fit in and be the guy. You know, he wanted to be the guy that everyone like sort of propped him up to be. The fact that he does not give Kreese the acceptance in that moment, and that
his first thought isn't himself in that moment either. His first thought is, I have to go be with my kids. I have to coach my kids. This is what I need to do. And they have a history of Kreese coming in at these moments and manipulating him and turning him into a way where it takes him off track, takes him away from where he needs to be. So it shows Johnny's growth in this. And throughout our coverage of Cobra Kai, I'm sure Jason is tired of me hearing this, but I know, Grace, you are used to me saying this, even though it's been a while. Mm-hmm. This is the show about generational trauma. Right. This is a show about how to heal. And the fact that this is coming from a male perspective, I think is really, really powerful, especially in today's day and age. And I really applaud how the show like handled the situation, because there is resolution. Like you said, Grace, it doesn't come right away. There is space. But in that resolution, the way that it's just, William Zabka really came. He really brought his stuff. He came when he confronted Kreese, and he brought all of those years of playing Johnny with him into that scene, and you could tell it was like genuine, and it was just a really great moment that I'm glad we got on TV.
Yeah, and to know that the Johnny of hell, even 3 years before that moment, may have clamored for a Kreese apology, may have eaten that up and have been like, wow, like this is the moment I've been waiting for. But now Johnny has so much in his life. His life is so full. He doesn't even care about this Kreese apology. He's like, you are in my rear view. I don't care about you. I have so much to look forward to. I have so much in my life. I've gotten 3 kids in like 2 years, basically. He had Robbie biologically, but now he actually has Robbie. So he's kind of grown 3 kids over the last 2 years. And it's like, I don't need you anymore. Like you're not going to affect me anymore. So your apology means really nothing. And then to kind of come back at that later with the talk he and Kreese have, where, I mean, Johnny breaks down. You know, like I don't know if people that were writing the Karate Kid movies in the 80s would have ever even thought to have this type of dialogue, to have this type of confrontation. Because I think a conceit of those movies is like, boys don't cry. Oh, you know what? I probably shouldn't have said that. I'm as I'm now the #1 Hillary Swank hater. Come on. But anyway, but it's so good to see that moment for Johnny to confront Kreese and tell him, yeah, it did bother me for a long time that you threw me away, but here I am now confronting you about it, giving you all my feelings about it.
He comes with, like, his first statement was, I loved you, man. Like, I loved you, and you threw me away like trash. These are very simple words that people can relate to. They are things that I'm sure people have felt. I know I have felt in my life. And so it just makes the moment even more powerful, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then so obviously then we get that, like the thing. We'll talk about Kreese, what happens with Kreese, but we get sort of them coaching Cobra Kai, ultimately like tying up the points, and then it's going to be Johnny and Wolf battling off, and Johnny's going to prevail and win, which is like very fun. It's like the that moment at the end of the thing where it's like actually the coaches have to fight is like genius. It's so fun.
I would love to hear from people that actually participate in karate tournaments.
Your coach,
like what are rules in the karate tournament? Like, is this points thing a real thing? We're gonna tie it up in points or whatever, and then the senseis have to fight. Like, what if you have a sensei that's like 80 something years old?
I was just gonna say this. This is so funny.
Yeah. Then you almost had that in a Johnny and a Wolf. A Wolf who was just like this young, strong, like athletic fighter who would literally probably kill someone Johnny's age with one punch, not even meaning to. And like, how does that actually work in the karate
just
world?
Some dojo, like where the sensei is this 86-year-old retired man, like, and the coaches will fight. He's like, what?
Like, say what? I was going to forfeit. Like, what are you talking about? Just give it to him. Look at me. You think I'm going to do this?
Like, if that grandfather from Korea was there, he would take it. I think, though, about Wolf, can I just say, do you think, like, in his audition, like in the actor's audition, it was, can you tilt your head to the left? Like, and there was so much head tilting. And
you move your arms around a lot.
Yeah, so much stuff. And there were times where I was like, why is this character here? What's going on? But I'm glad that, he was the ultimate villain in the end.
Yeah, I mean, part of the thing is like in the show that like you do have to have like there needs to be like another
There's a
bad
big
guy
bad
after the bad you've beaten the big bad,
I mean,
yeah.
It's
Some
so
point.
interesting because Johnny in this scenario is Daniel. He's
That's right.
fighting against the modern day Cobra Kai, that is the Iron Dragons, people that have no mercy, people that aren't afraid to break the rules and break bones, in order to get what they want. So it's fascinating how full circle it's come in every way. Johnny is literally fighting the Cobra Kai of today.
There's this moment. I think it's like after it's like they're back. Johnny is like he's at the dojo, and there's like the words on the wall. And I had like a basic question that I had planned to ask everybody I was interviewing, which is like, do you have any personal mantras? And as soon as I was watching the episodes, like with that, and I was like, oh, I gotta cross this question out, because like what I really actually liked about the ending and the final thing was so much about this idea of like, you can't just live your life by one like 3-sentence mantra that will like guide you through everything. The fact that you have to adapt. It's why I actually really love both like Danny training, like the Danny training Johnny scenes, and that final scene where they're sitting together between Johnny and Danny, where it's so much, Jason, like this is they've both learned from each other about the things that you can't have no mercy all the time like Johnny wanted to have, and you can't be a pushover all the time like it can't always end peacefully or whatever. They both learn from each other. And yeah, this moment when they flash back to the, catching the fly, and then the last moment is like Johnny smacking it out of the air. It's like I thought it was just like so good in terms of like between the speech and then this moment, like sort of wrapping up the story we've been told about Johnny.
Yeah, and that last strike first, strike hard, no mercy is like, it's showing also mantras can evolve. Like it meant one thing at one time, now it means something else. Now he's changed it, flipped it, and made it his own. And that's how people are as adults. You evolve from yes, Johnny had a delayed evolution. He started in his late 40s, but this is how people change and evolve. Typically, they have opinions and thoughts that change over time.
And I don't think that transformation would have happened if he didn't confront Kreese, if he didn't get the closure there, if he didn't fight, if he didn't have that journey of really kind of putting his past behind him, so he could take these words and make them new, and he could make them his own. He was doing that a little bit at the beginning. He wanted to do that so bad, but there was like the old Cobra Kai programming within him, I think, that just got in the way. And as he worked on himself, and as he grew, and as he learned to love himself and love others, he was able to kind of see a different way to do Cobra Kai.
I also believe Zabka directed his first ever episode, which is in the last batch. He did the episode where he gets married, I think, and the baby gets born. He directed that episode, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I just don't know why William Zabka's not a bigger.
I agree.
Bigger name. I mean, to think that he had this in him, to know that he's so talented in the way that he's come off with all these scenes. You have to wonder like where he's been a joke in pop culture for years, for decades. I remember that How I Met Your Mother episode where with Barney and Grace's friend Ralph. It's just so it's seeing what he can pull off. I really hope he gets more work to do now that Cobra Kai is over.
Yeah.
Same.
All right. Should we talk about Danny? Because there's a lot of Danny stuff. I know we talked about it's like, there's been a lot of Danny storyline, and it's obviously not done. It's going to be in Karate Kids Legends. But I think we have to talk about the Miyagi CGI.
Do we? Have to talk about it?
Oh my gosh. There was so much Danny, but I felt like they actually did temper themselves a little bit. They held themselves back a little bit, because at times in this Cobra Kai show, it has been the Daniel show. And I think in this last batch, they realized we got to make this more the Johnny show. And Daniel's kind of a supporting character in the Johnny story. Yes, he did have his own segments. He had his own moments. So we had to wrap up the Miyagi stuff, which was just utterly pointless by the end. But whatever. Yes. And that Miyagi CG, like when Marissa and I covered part 2 of the season 6 in Cobra Kai on our podcast, the Good Pod.
Yeah.
We talked about the fact that, wow, like they actually did the Miyagi CGI really well. Like that actually wasn't bad at all. Like everything tracked, it sounded right, it was great. And so I feel like the creators of the show took that and were like, you think that was something? Wait till you see this. And then just really just threw it in the garbage. It was just like the terrible stunt doubling, the terrible CGI-ness of it. You know, when you have Miyagi saying something for 5 seconds and off the screen, that's one thing. But then when you have to do it for a elongated amount of time, you see all the flaws in the technology, and it's like, wow, this was real bad.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, if I can take my, yes, it was bad CGI. If I can put on my rose-colored glasses and look at that scene, I think it was really important for Daniel to have that like vision, that moment of like being with Mr. Miyagi again, and also like the back-to-back and then the pose. Like that's very classic Daniel and very classic Mr. Miyagi. But even in the beginning of this season 3, I was very annoyed with Daniel and his, like, I have to find out what Mr. Miyagi could have done something bad. Like, yes, Daniel, he is a human. Like, yes, this is how it is. And so I'm glad that like in this last little batch that came to an end, we kind of knew what was happening there. He got his little fight thing, and then we could move on with that. It was interesting to me that Daniel's, first take in this batch of episodes was like ignoring everything that was happening in Barcelona, which is not something he normally would do. So he was a little off, and it was interesting to see him off at the start.
So I kind of like, I felt like we were getting to a point where Daniel might be able to see Miyagi as human, but I feel like we really messed it up by the end. And Miyagi is still God to Daniel because he actually did this in service of the right thing, quote unquote. It was like, okay, well, I thought we were going to go somewhere, and we just went back to Miyagi being God to Daniel.
That is a fair point. I really like this. I actually the CGI, I could take it or leave it. For me, this story of your mentor who you thought was and so yeah, I guess like to your point, like Jason, it like resets it a little bit, but let's forget that is what happened. The idea of your mentor, even if it is in the pursuit of like the right thing, withholding information from you, the responsibility of being an adult who, like is somebody who people look up to, and then weighing that responsibility and feeling like when you're a kid, like adults have all the answers and the people that you looked up to were like the be all and end all, and then you grow up and you find like they're just as human. I'm having this like very real thing happen, like as I find out about like my parents and my grandparents, and like doing more digging to find out like oh yeah, tell me more about this thing that you said 15 years ago that I didn't really process, is maybe like a weird thing for it to have happened. Like my grandfather, I'm only recently really starting to think about the fact that like he was a cop. I think I want to know more, but like my grandfather has passed away, and like I only know things from what other people have said. I really like this storyline, where I think like I'm glad the show is actually Johnny's storyline, but I'm actually appreciative that like Daniel is here, because I find this sort of storyline fascinating. It's one of the things I want to talk with like Jacob Bertrand about too, is like at the beginning of the show he plays young kid. He still seems young, but like in terms of like there are younger kids going, in that time where you come like at one point you think you're you're being mentored, and now suddenly people are looking up to you. And so I really liked this. I don't know if it was like executed perfectly, but for the most part, I did like it. I also will say, Ralph Macchio had said that they were going to CGI both Danny and Mr. Miyagi to be both like Danny was going to be the younger version of himself, and due to budget restraints, they couldn't do it. And I actually said to him, I was like, I actually think it works way better as the adult, because this is the lesson you need as an adult. But also, I wonder if the CGI looked not great because they didn't have that much budget. That's all I can think. That's all
listen, we can barely get the Miyagi stuff to work. We're not gonna push you with the Daniel stuff too. Let's just leave you as you are, Dan.
But I think I think he needs that moment when I know it's his dream and it's fictitious or whatever, and like it's a little bit hokey to be like he's literally fighting skeletons, like the skeletons in his closet or whatever.
Right?
But I mean, that to me is like 80s camp of like, yeah, they're all dressed up. I think there's a skeleton in the I think a lot of that stuff in there is not. He's wearing a San Diego Chargers.
It's in the first Karate Kid.
Yeah, it's in the first Karate
movie.
Kid.
All the Johnny and his buddies are all dressed as skeletons for Halloween. Yeah,
right. And then he's wearing a San Diego Chargers jersey. And he's wearing a San Diego Chargers shirt in that scene as well. There's a lot of little nods apparently. So I don't know. I quite like that thematic thing of like you now are the position where you're learning about that adults are basically like, they don't have all the answers you thought they did as kids, and you have to be
infallible.
I like it.
Everyone has flaws, but like I said, by the end, there's just kind of like, oh no, actually Miyagi's still a really great guy. We still didn't really get like any closure to the Mr. Miyagi killed someone in the Sicky Dicky. Like we still didn't really get any real.
That's for Karate Kid Legends.
Yeah, I feel like that's where that's going. I feel like that's where it's going.
You think so?
I think there was such a focus on Johnny at the end, which as it should be. But if there was no movie, I think we would have gotten closure in the series. But because there's a movie, and because the movie is bringing in like other characters from the Karate Kid verse, I feel like this might be connected to other storylines.
Grace, did you talk to your friend Ralph?
Oh yeah,
anything about the movie, and if there's going to be any linkage to Cobra Kai?
Linkage to Cobra Kai. I mean, other than him being in it, we didn't really talk much about, other than it was coming. He's excited for it. That's it. So yeah,
listen, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah,
less so when I saw the mop top they have Daniel in the movie. I'm like, oh, that toupee is interesting. But to see the into the Miyagi verse that's going to be happening with Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, I'm very curious if there's going to be like a Jade Smith cameo in that movie.
I was surprised that the opposite, that there wasn't more like and to the idea, Marissa, that you're saying of like you think it's going to be there, but that they didn't like explicitly say it. He's like, and I'm off to where like I thought there'd be more. Like, hey, we're also going to do a movie, but I feel like they did I feel like the constraint of it is, I know some people, I mean, talk about Hilary Swank's number one hater. They had sort of teased the creators of the show. There was like, there's another cameo coming. He's only ever been in the trilogy. He's never been in the show. And then it was Vidal like being the announcer, which is like, that's fine. That's fine.
The cameo everyone was waiting for, Daryl Vidal. It would have hit so much better if they hadn't have put that out in the press, and that had just been a surprise. Like, because I was like, oh, get ready for a surprise cameo. I was like, oh.
I mean, to be fair, in terms of putting it in the press, we were the ones to break that. Like we asked them, it was like, anybody else coming, and they were like, yeah, there's one more person. So they should have lied. They should have lied, but what are they supposed to do?
They're like, no, definitely not. They should have at least said Hilary Swank is not going to be in this show.
Go get your hopes up.
Yeah, they should have got my hopes up. But yeah. Well, when the movie info first dropped, they were like, oh. Karate Kid movie is coming. We're like, oh my god, is it going to be like a big screen Cobra Kai? And they're like, no, like none of the people associated with Cobra Kai are going to be involved in Karate Kid Legends. I was like, oh, okay. So that really kind of dashed my hopes that there would be any linkage. So I don't know, Marissa, if we're going to get that mystery solved in the movie, because I really kind of feel like it's going to be a very standalone movie.
It could be.
Would I love a Johnny Lawrence cameo in that movie? Of course. Like I
hope he calls them and is like, how do you change a diaper, or like some sort of like parenting dad or like girl dad thing coming. Yeah,
but for nothing else but to acknowledge William Zabka and the fact that he's played a big part in revitalizing interest in the Karate Kid.
Yeah, I don't think that movie would happen if Cobra Kai didn't 100%.
Happen. Okay, do we want to talk? I mean, you want to talk about Johnny Kreese? It's a pretty wild ending. Johnny Kreese and Harry Silver.
Kreese and Silver and the yacht.
The exploding yacht.
Big boom.
The big boom.
Yeah. I mean, if we can start with Silver and coming back into this batch of episodes, and really kind of the fake out of like almost like Silver's like, hey, coming hat in hand. You guys, I just really want to win this thing. I really want to leave a legacy. I'm sick. So almost trying to make us think Silver was going to be a sympathetic figure, which is what this show does so well. They turn enemies into friends. I was like, are they really going to try to do this with Silver? And it was like, nope, psych, he's still a dick. he's still the worst.
And he's still addicted to spas. Like the fact that he stalked
so funny.
What's his face at a spa? Like so much spa. No, there's nothing wrong with spas. Live your life, have so much fun. But I love that like it stayed that true to that character the entire time. But yeah, I mean, I almost fell for it. I was like, oh my gosh, you're dying and you just want to do this. But when he was starting to talk to Wolf about like take him out, like do the thing, I'm like, oh, you're still the same. You're still the same dude.
And I loved the fake out of like we almost went back to that cheesy 80s movie, like go kidnap his wife and kid, and we're gonna hold him hostage and make him decide if he's gonna fight or not. I was like, oh my god, are we really gonna do this? And I'm like, oh nope, plot twist. I was like, oh thank God, thank God we didn't do that.
I have to give my sister a shout out. She did say the cigar was the real hero of that entire situation. It wasn't either one of them.
No,
the cigar.
Well, I think when he first is seen in the show, he's comes out of the thing, he's smoking the cigar, and then it's the cigar that blows up the yacht. So
yeah,
a pretty wild moment on Cobra Kai.
I was like, okay, that's it.
This season has brought us like 500% more murder. Like no one ever died on this show until the end of the last part. Like, oh my god, like people are dying left or right at this point. So that was very, very interesting. But I feel very appropriate to call back to especially Silver's roots, because Silver showed up in Karate Kid 3, which was the cartooniest and wackiest move. I literally saw a clip from Karate Kid 3 today where Miyagi takes on Kreese, Silver, and Barnes all at the same time, and it was just so over the top wacky. I was just like, oh my god, this is so crazy. It just reminded me of where this all started and how different it is. And I'm just thankful for what it evolved into. But yeah,
my friend Ralph Macchio said, Karate Kid 3, I would not put it at the top of my list of top 3 Karate Kid movies.
Way to go, Ralph. Way to go. I'm glad you have that self-awareness.
Yeah, it was something. Yeah. And so for Silver to go out, it was Silver and Kreese both to go out in this wild way, I think was really fitting to who Silver is. Now, Grace, I heard through the grapevine that this may or may not have actually been the end of Kreese.
Yeah, have you heard this?
Oh, yeah, I did hear that. Like, there's an alternate ending for Kreese here.
Yeah, he told me they filmed a scene where it's like a magazine stand, which I don't think exists in our time anymore. I was thinking about that the other day.
There was one though. There was
it showed Johnny's Sports Illustrated cover at the very end.
Okay, they were gonna pan over. And it was going to be a magazine cover that said, whatever happened to Terry Silver. And then a hand with a ring on it would grab it. It was going to be Kreese's hand. But they said it felt a little hokey. So Cove said it to me that they had filmed it and they cut it out. And then the creators of the show have also said they did film it, but decided ultimately not to show it, with the idea being like, make up your mind whether you think he's dead.
I do believe he survived. Like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, he would
Cobra
survive.
Kai never dies.
Yeah.
Kreese never dies.
I mean, at that point, Kreese had to be just an immortal figure. Like he could never die. He was in a yacht explosion, for God's sake.
But he like washed up on an island. He's like living his little island life. He's away from society. We'll never see him again. But I think he made it through because the man faked his own death with Jell-O and then walked out of jail. Okay, Jason. Like if this is a telenovela, if this is a soap opera, the man has lived in some capacity.
Yeah. It's pretty wild ending, but it's pretty fun for like the the guy who's been the big bad of the show, I think.
I mean, it was probably like 40% of the show's budget, and then the other 60 went to that Miyagi CGI.
Macchio saw it blowing up, and he's like, "No, my deep fake."
There goes young Ralph.
Any other story? I mean, episode 1 is really like the Sensei Kim story of her going. I thought it was an interesting choice to kick off this batch with something that I feel like is quite different. But I do appreciate that the show did do it. I think in terms of like giving the only woman sensei on the show, sort of a fitting ending, and like this empowered, independent ending of like breaking free from her father and everybody else who's wanted her to be whoever she's supposed to be. That was good.
Yeah, and I thought it also like it was Kreese who gave her the confidence to do that, which is increase and Tori, the Kreese and Tori relationship as well. So like, is Kreese a girl dad? I have no idea. But I think this also gives us an opportunity to talk about Chosen and Jesse from Saved by the Bell, and then
wild.
like ending
Wild.
up like I'm glad that Chosen like went back to Korea at the end of this to like go be with her, but like the detour with Jesse from Saved by the Bell was a bit odd.
When she showed up, I was like, "Is that Elizabeth Berkley? Like, is that her?" I was like, "That's her. That's Jesse." Like, what the hell? I was shocked.
She's been in stuff, right? Like she's been acting for. I mean, remember when she left Saved by the Bell, and then it was like, well, I don't know if that's gonna work. And then she's been in stuff, I guess. Yeah.
Well, she was in Showgirls.
Very
She's in
memorable,
Showgirls.
very memorable movie, Showgirls.
Mhm.
And I feel like from Showgirls to the recent reincarnation of Saved by the Bell a few years ago,
Yeah, she was in that.
I'm not sure where she's been at. So I don't know, Grace. I don't know.
Yeah, she's. I mean, it feels like she's like continually worked, but like never. She hasn't really been in like a thing for like as a recurring character. Looks like she was in like CSI Miami in season 6 and 7. It's like the last thing
As
she
like
was
as like a dead body.
I don't know. Recurring. I don't know how recurring you can be as a unless
Okay.
you're. Yeah.
It's
But,
like a cold case. Just
Yeah,
like,
maybe
keep going back to it.
flashing back to it.
She was also completely cut out of The Idol when they did all the rewrites on the show The Idol. Worst show I ever podcasted about. I'll push her again.
Really?
Anyway, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I heard. I thankfully didn't watch. But yeah, that was wild. And listen, I was coming into this part thinking Chosen and Kumiko, we're going to get that wrapped up.
Yeah.
You know, the towel guy in the last part is going to be like a cousin or something, and it was a big misunderstanding. And then just like get the bomb dropped on us, like, oh, Kumiko says I'm just a friend. I'm like, damn, like what happened there? So that was a surprise to me. And then just to kind of end it with Chosen and Kim without really dialogue there, I was like, okay. I mean, I guess that's fine. You know,
there was a nod. There was a nod.
It was a nod. It was kind of like a what's after tertiary? It was kind of like a quaternary storyline. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. We can assume that they are now happy in wherever that village is or that dojo is, happily training kids not to kill each other, not to hurt each other in a great way. I can be okay with that.
Generational trauma.
Yeah. Dayun, you know, in the whole killing her grandfather thing, I was like, whoa, that's pretty heavy. So they were really like, I was really buying the whole like she's gonna kill Kreese. Like,
yeah,
like, oh my god! First of all, I was like, did she poison his whatever he's drinking? Like that was the vibes I was getting in that scene. I was like, okay, like this is weird. Is Kreese gonna die here? And then for her, and then when we started to see both, you know, the person under the covers from far away, I was like, oh, she about to kill her granddaddy. Like this ain't great. So that was interesting. That was an interesting way to end the Dayun storyline, and for her not to be just kind of taken almost totally off the canvas was interesting to me, because I felt like we were getting to a good place with Dayun at the last when we ended part 2. She was not the mindless karate robot that we thought she was. She actually had humanity. Then almost kind of just drop her off after she killed her grandfather, which I guess it's kind of like last one in, first one out. Like last new character we introduced for first one out on the last batch of episodes.
Do you think she'll watch 90 Day Fiance with Chosen?
Oh my god, I would kill for like a deleted scene of Chosen showing Dayun 90 Day Fiance and what she has to think about this.
I feel like Jason, you're like hitting on something with that too. Is where like there's this there is like this. She has this conversation with her where they're talking about like. She's like, was it worth it? Like, you know, training this hard and never having any friends and whatever. And then she's like, yeah. Then she walks away. And so then she doesn't do this thing. And I do feel it's like, you have to break free from everything. And I feel like there's this like eternal thing that the show, there's one piece of it that struggles where it's like the show so desperately wants to be like, I think a little bit like, you know, be good, do, you know, whatever. And then it's like the way that she'll show that she's good, she's independent and broken free and defeated the cycle is by killing her grandfather. You
could have put him in a home. You could have done something else. You had to kill the man. Like, geez, you could have bought him out. You had to kill him.
But you know, it's TV. You know, it's like action. You know, fighting TV. So yeah, the guy has to die. You know, yeah, it's fine. Anything else you want to touch? What else? What did we miss? What else? Highlights from the last few episodes, batch, or anything overall?
Do we think Sam and Miguel are forever, or do we think they're just going to have their little rendezvous or in wherever she's going? Where's she going? Okinawa.
I was never that into the Sam Miguel of it all. I was just like, okay, they're fine. I never really felt much chemistry there. So I think it's fine that they're going to, you know, F around in Okinawa for like a couple weeks and then they'll probably go both their own ways. I'm happy with that ending. I'm fine with that. I'm, you know, as much as I was not a big fan of the Sam character, I am happy with her ending. I'm happy with her deciding not to fight.
Yeah.
Because it always just felt like Sam is just like not as into it as everyone else. Like Sam is there fighting, but she doesn't have a lot riding on this, like a lot of our other characters. She's just kind of there. She's supposedly good at it. I was like, okay, Sam's all right. She's a little whiny at times. She makes things about her. So I'm like, okay, cool. But I do like her ending, how she chose to sit it out. And now, you know, how Daniel through his dream learned like, hey, like karate's not all, winning and losing is not all. It's about what you learn from it. So I really love that kind of that ending that Sam got there.
Yeah. And I like that both she and Robbie kind of had like the same realization. Like we don't have to fight. We can be just good people. Like it doesn't matter if I went Robbie came through his
Robbie had to come to terms with that realization because he broke his freaking knee or whatever happened there.
Yeah.
He was like, well, I guess I'm happy with this. Like I guess I'm happy that I had to break a knee for Miguel to win.
But I also think like he also showed growth by like just asking for a moment by himself, really just kind of sitting with it.
And then no one gave it to him.
And then,
like,
I know.
By myself, like, sure. And then I was like, actually, I had something to say to you.
What do you think about those two, though? Do you think that they will become the karate spokespeople for like? Okay, so Grace, one thing you should know about our coverage: sometimes we talk about karate like a virus.
Yes,
it's like only a virus in the valley. Also,
right.
So do we think that Tori and Robbie will be the karate like?
They're going to contaminate
pandemic.
The world.
Yeah, exactly.
The world with karate.
Like, how's this going to work?
100%. Yeah, they're going to be the next. Yeah, they're the next.
They're going to go spread karate far and wide, and people are going to be getting into random fights in malls and grocery stores.
I'm not American, but I heard you guys dropped out of the World Health Organization, so this is bad news. This is
okay, Grace.
Good or bad news for karate spread around the world.
Grace.
What? Let's not go there.
Grace.
Hey, just saying.
Listen, don't brag. Don't brag that you're not an American right now, okay?
Not for long.
Oh yeah, welcome to the 51st state. I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm so excited to welcome you to the country.
So exciting.
It'll be so great.
You really kind of came in at the tail end. You came in at the part 3 of the last season of America.
Yeah, which character are we?
We will tell you one day about the story of America. It'll be great.
Okay.
But
yeah, go ahead.
So we've got, to wrap the kids up, we got Dimitri and
the binary
Hawk,
bros.
The binary broing it out. Dimitri, foregoes his dream of MIT or TMI, as Moon called it, to go hang out with his binary bro. I really love that ending for them. It was they treated it with the seriousness it deserved, which is like not much. It was just like, hey, this stuff is happening. Like there's so much else happening, but you got to know that Dimitri and Eli are cool again. So I was happy with that ending.
Yeah.
Selfishly, as someone who worked in VR, the fact that VR was used in this by the binary bros was very I was like, oh my gosh, it's my life, it's happening.
It's very good. Yeah, I mean, I think it says a lot that I'm like so less interested in all of the kid stuff.
Yeah, you were like, well, we talked to all the adults. We're done.
I mean, that's just speaking to me. That's me personally being like, yep, and the others.
And everyone else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone else was pretty much wrapped up in the second part of the season. True. And I mean, the main characters, the main 4 kids, the brothers and soon to be sister-in-law, like all of that, like those are the people we ended up focusing on.
I know, and then it's confusing because in real life, some of them are
right? Tori and Hawk are dating.
Yeah. And then the new engagement.
Sam and Robbie are engaged. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy. Yeah. And to think about in the show, like all 4 of those crisscrossed at some point. Miguel, Tori, Sam, and Robbie. So interesting. But yeah, I love the Robbie Tori ending because it felt like they really got what they deserved and what they wanted, because they've both been the underdog, the tough luck kids for so long, and they neither one of them have prospects outside of karate, and then for them to get careers in karate was such a great ending for them. And they they end as the one true couple in the show, like of the kids. I really have enjoyed the journey for Robbie and Tori. Tori and her like disappearing little brother. I just swore she had a little brother at some point she was taking care of, and he disappeared.
She did. Yeah, I also like that they showed that success can happen outside of college with these two characters. You know, like, yes, it's a very lucky, you have to be good at karate and someone will hand you a sponsorship type of situation. But there were conversations about trade schools and there were conversations about what to do. It wasn't necessarily like you're doomed because you didn't get into Stanford like Miguel. You know what I mean?
That kind of is. I think that actually is. There's also an important thing of for a thing where like a show where you then like there's this aspirational thing of like, oh, I'm gonna go and do karate, and then be like, you probably won't be in as these hopefully that'd be amazing, but like only so many people go to these like, you know, far off places in the world to do karate. So yeah, the setting there sort of like, yeah, might not always work. It's like actually good. I think it's healthy.
I liked the conversation with the guidance counselor who was like, I was really good at field hockey.
Yeah.
Like Johnny was like, but he was going to be a world champion karate person. It was funny.
To touch on like the seki teki of it all, like, you know, Grace, sure. in our coverage, you know, we the people on the show never announced the tournament the same way twice. So I was the Sakataka. I thought that was interesting because like these are like, if you break it down, these are like 3 fights that last 6 minutes, and we're all here for that. Like, is there any other entertainment? Like at the All Valley one year, we had Carrie Underwood. You know what I mean? Like we can't get anyone else to show up.
But in the Sekiteki in Barcelona, we had floating mats and we had like all that other stuff.
Tagging in gauntlets.
It was like Guts from Nickelodeon. But
it was very Nickelodeon coded. Yeah.
So we all show up at this gymnasium for a 6-minute fight. What else is there to do? I don't know. It was so weird to me. If I really thought about it, like we're here to see 2 fights that last 6 minutes each.
No,
are there any undercards? Like what else is happening?
The 5-year-olds went first, and then
age grab, and then they did have a bunch of fights, right? Because that's the points, the whole point system. Or am I now mixing up? I'm mixing up everything.
No, the points carried over from Barcelona, so there were points in that, and then.
All the individual competitions happened in the second part. This was all just we were focusing on like 3 fights this whole part. Well, 4 if you count Johnny and Wolf. But to touch on like the bigger moments, like listen, I do not cry. Like as a full grown man, I do not cry. I definitely did not cry at several moments of this final show.
Do you know what my buddy Ralph Macchio called?
Oh God,
season 6, episode 13. You know what he called it? Cobra Kai. That's what he called it.
Cobra Kai.
Was that the one with the birth and the wedding and all that?
No, it's the one where Johnny and Kreese hug, and I think Robbie cries, and somebody else, and then he has his moment with Mishima. That's what he called it. Cobra Kai.
Yeah, I definitely did not cry when Johnny and Carmen got married and the birth of the kid happened, and he brought everyone in, including like, you know, Chosen, the kids, Rosa. I definitely did not cry at that. I definitely did not cry when the baby came out. He's like, you want to come see her? Like, I definitely did not cry at that moment.
We just had this whole conversation about how having men cry on TV was really healthy. It's okay to say
it's okay
that you cried.
I'm stuck in the 80s. I'm stuck in the 80s where men can't cry.
It's okay. I will willingly say I cried a lot through this end, mainly also because, you know, the show, you know, means so much to me in terms of the people that I met covering it and all of that. There's a lot tied into the show, this little crazy little show. So it was emotional.
People really liked it. I mean, I really like it too, but people really love Cobra Kai. I mean, they say it's like hard to believe that it's like that's sort of it for Cobra Kai. And it's just like, I know it came out in 3 parts, but it's like, all right, here's 5 episodes and then it's over. That's it.
I mean, it was 3 parts over like a year and a half, I think. Or something.
Well, and there was like a year break before that. Like there was like a drought in coverage for a while because season 4 was 2022. So
there was definitely a long break, and I feel like this is the right time to end it. I feel like the show's gone on for a good amount of time. We were kind of running out of runway on some of these characters, So I'm glad we ended it where we ended it, and I am thankful for what we got. I'm thankful that I never was like, that was a terrible season of Cobra Kai, or that was a terrible whatever of Cobra Kai. I never felt that way through the whole run of the series. I could see some of the seams where I was like, okay, like let's wrap this baby up. And I'm glad we got you here. I'm so glad that we got the happiest of endings. And they didn't feel like they had to do something like, fancy to be like, oh, you didn't get the ending you wanted, but you did this, and this. But no, we got Tori winning, we all wanted. We got Miguel ultimately winning what we all wanted. I feel like I would have also taken a Robbie win. I would have also been happy with that. But the fact that Miguel won at the end, like Marissa said, those flashbacks and that final fight where we see the journey Miguel's gone through, especially with the him learning to walk again. I was like, definitely did not cry at that moment. Just to see all that, to remind us where we were, to actually go take it back to where Miguel was a kid, was a child, and now he's a full ass grown adult in showtime of 2.5 years, was a really special thing to see and be reminded of how far we've come.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important for shows to sort of decide when they're gonna end, because I do think that, like, you can imagine that, like, do you get the Johnny Lawrence Kreese moment if they're thinking like that, you have to, like, if they're always sort of aspiring to, like, at some point we'll do that, but we have to leave ourselves, like, where do you go after that? So the fact that, like, they did decide to end the show at that point, I think is important and actually really good for the show, because I do think it's a pretty satisfying ending in the age where, like, it takes a long time for shows to come out and then things get canceled or cut or whatever. Yeah. So I am quite glad that they got to sort of stick the landing.
Also, I have to say, one time, I'll do Grace. One time when I was at the Paramount Studios lot, I got to see the Eagle Fang van, and the dust is like permanent. Like it is there. Oh, yeah. And one thing I do kind of wish that was a little bit more in this was some Eagle Fang moments. I mean, I did enjoy the craziness that was that moment in Johnny's story.
That is pretty funny. The Eagle Fangs. Yeah, them, like the two dojos in one. Stuff was very fun.
That was so fun.
Yeah.
And it was just such a great ride. And I am sad it's over, but I'm happy for all that it brought me, including my podcast relationship with Marissa here. Like that's where we got our first start. That's where we first met each other. And now we're doing our own podcast together. So it's we've come a long way with Cobra Kai. The Cobra Kai was the genesis of it.
So fun.
Thanks, Johnny Lawrence.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's something else, would you want to let people know about the Good Pod?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
The Good Pod. If you love scripted TV, from scripted TV's heyday, like 2009, well, Marissa and I are covering The Good Wife. We are doing a rewatch of The Good Wife. We are currently in halfway through season 2 of The Good Wife. So if you like that show, or even if you want to discover a new fun show, it's a great show. Come on with us to The Good Pod. We also cover the new show, which is spin-off from The Good Wife, Elsbeth. If you're a current watcher of that series, we're also covering that alongside of our Good Wife coverage. It's a fun time. Come on over.
It's fun. It's timely. It's me and Jason talking about stuff and things. And also, like, you would be surprised how many guest stars are on the show. Like, Pedro Pascal is there. You want to watch a show with Pedro Pascal? You want to watch a show with Renee Elise Goldberry? Like, get in there. Go watch it. It's got a lot of Michael J. Fox is there. There's a lot of people that show up on the show. And also, it's very interesting to hear things that we are talking about today, being talked about back then, and just how far or not far we have come in our society as a whole. And as a Chicagoan, I got to say, it's a fun time to talk about I'm always pointing out the Chicago stuff. So if you want to know about Chicago, it's a good time.
Very fun. Where can people find it, and where can people find the two of you as well?
Anywhere you can find your podcast, you can find The Good Pod. That's just where we're at. Episodes come out weekly about The Good Wife, and weekly on about Elsbeth when Elsbeth is running. And for myself, you can find me. I'm kind of giving up on social media, but not really.
I love that for you. I wish, Marissa.
I mean, I'm not as big time as you, Grace. So like I have
No.
this is the privilege of not having a fandom. I set up a website called itsmemarissag.com. There you can sign up for my email list. You can also see links to all of my other like I am on Blue Sky. I am in different places. So you can find links there. But these days I am helping people start podcasts. So if that is something that you're into, please sign up for my email list. I put a lot of good resources out there and I'd love to help you start yours. I mean, if I could do it, talking about Cobra Kai, I mean, you could do it. Like it's a thing you can do. So it's me, marissag.com.
I forget. As I was telling you before we started, I get your emails. They're very, very, very good. Your tips are great. People should check it out because I wish I knew as much now as I did when I first started trying to podcast. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jason, what about you? Anything else you got going on?
Right now it's the season of love. Apparently, I am covering so many of the love shows that you know and love, including Love Is Blind over on the Love at First Sight feed, over on the reality side of Rob Has Podcast on We Know Reality TV. I'm covering that with Asia Welch and with Mary Krakowski right now for Love Is Blind. Also covering Married at First Sight with Asia Welch on our podcast, The Perfect Match. This season of Married at First Sight is crazy. If you had not heard of Married at First Sight, you want to check something out, check out this nonsense. It's drama, it's love, it's craziness. So check that out as well. So I got a good pod. And that's where you can find me. You can find me on Blue Sky at JR33D if you so choose to. I'm not a big social media-er, so do it if you want. Don't if you don't. I don't really care.
I love that. That's the best. Live your life. Live your life.
Live your life.
Yeah.
Live your life.
All right, make sure you subscribe to We Know Scripted TV for weekly recap. There's a lot of TV on right now between Severance and The White Lotus and Yellow Jackets. We're covering all of those weekly. Tara and I talking to Tastemakers. There's a weekend program with Antonio. I'm kind of on social media, but I am, in addition to podcasting on here, also, as we've mentioned, writing for Parade. I covered a lot of Cobra Kai. Check out those interviews I did. I'm covering Severance and Yellow Jackets and all sorts of other stuff weekly. So check that. I very much appreciate anybody who checks that out. And this was so fun chatting about Cobra Kai. My first time talking about Cobra Kai, other than me being like, Jason, the show is wild, one time on social media. So this was very fun. We will see everybody next time. Let me know Cobra Kai. But of course, Cobra Kai never dies.
Never.